Hey guys, so I'm now doing a second video. I wanted to work out some audio problems with my previous upload today, and so I'm doing two videos in a row. Here we go. So, I wanted to talk about the question, are all psychics fake? If you look at pop culture today, you'll find that psychics are heavily scorned by society, especially people in my generation, millennials. If you look at a TV show like, I don't know, Adam Ruins Everything, it's a popular one. I mean, these guys, they don't even look for a second perspective. They say across the board, psychics and mediums, all they want is your money. They're all predators. And I'm going to add to that there are many psychics who are in fact predators who want your money. And this is something that people in these communities have to be extremely aware of. I sometimes recall a scene from that quite gratuitous film called Bruno, starring Sacha Baron Cohen, where he goes to a celebrity psychic in Hollywood and tries to get information about some celebrity. I think it was Milli Vanilli after they died. It was a pretty sordid scene, and it was not something I recommend necessarily watching if you're squeamish about very raunchy humor. But in short, I mean, he basically demonstrates how the psychic he went to see was just completely full of crap and just saying whatever he wanted anybody to hear, right? And you can do that by going to psychics, asking for information about, let's say, people that you invent, deceased loved ones who are not dead, and you'll find that some of these psychics will still provide information about those people as if they were dead. It's like go to a psychic and ask about your Uncle Bob who's still alive. They'll say, well, Uncle Bob is in a better place now. I see him surrounded by white light, or in a beautiful meadow, in a beautiful garden, and Bob is with somebody. I think it's your great grandmother, right? So you could see in a very transparent way how commercial psychics can prey on people, and they may also use very basic cold reading and mentalism techniques to be able to keep generating what seems like positive hits. So it's quite sad that this happens. It's quite sad that this happens on on an industrial scale, that people who want to make a quick dollar are able to just put the moniker of psychic, with the prefix of psychic to their name, open a quick shop, and then provide a quote service that requires almost no overhead to be able to begin generating sizable amounts of revenue by people who are grieving and desperate for signs from deceased loved ones. And it's quite sad how this happens. And I think anybody in this field needs to be highly aware and highly combative against this practice. That said, to people who are skeptics of all things that are psychic or medium related, I can empathize, because you have these predators out there which ruin the name of what this means. But don't fall into the trap of materialist atheism. So materialist atheism proposes that there's no such thing as any event of the mind operating outside of the body. There is no such thing as psychics. There's no such thing as life after death. There's no such thing as ghosts. On and on and on. So basically, it's the philosophy of throwing the baby out with the bathwater. They know that there's predators. They know we all know that there's people out there who are using spiritual topics to make a buck. But the silliest thing to do is to take that fact and use that to paint with a broad brush that everybody is a certain way, or that all elements of a subject are false. And this is basically the atheist materialist standpoint. So they will deny the existence of all of it, even that which is scientifically backed, because psychic abilities have and mediumship have been scientifically proven, whether it's by Dr. Gary Schwartz at the University of Arizona, or by Dean Radin's experiments with various types of psychic abilities. And he has a new book out actually called I think it's called like Real Magic or something like that. And Radin has done an incredible amount of research into this subject. And for skeptics to properly explain the credible research, they end up really clutching at straws and stretching their arguments out as far as they can to try to cover up the legitimate research. And just, there's always some variable that's not good enough. It's always like the study was double blind, but it should have been triple blind. Maybe the researcher was biased. Maybe it needs to be replicated, or if all else fails, they go on to the James Randi fallacy. It's like, the $1 million challenge, that okay, no one's made $1 million because of this biased arc skeptic whose whole entire career was made off of debunking the existence of supernatural subjects, and somehow we expect him to give up his $1 million and tarnish his reputation forever. I'm not so sure if Randy is he still alive? I mean, I think he's close to like 90 years old, and God bless the guy. I mean, he's sure made a name for himself, and he is, I guess, still going into his late 80s at this point. But it was a fallacy 20 years ago when I heard that when I heard that argument being used to discredit psychic abilities, and it's a fallacy today. It will be a fallacy after James Randi kicks the bucket, because I'm sure people will still be using that $1 million challenge. But again, it's anybody who looks deeper into these subjects, we know that it's nonsense. And we also know that legitimate mediums and legitimate psychics exist. Here's the kicker, though. It's less common to find legitimate psychics and legitimate mediums, because it really is this special gift that certain people have. So this is not a very industrious concept, because people who want to make a buck, they don't care if they have the ability or not. They want to make money off of it. So maybe sometimes they have a little bit of an ability, and then they run with that. And I think that's usually what happens. So if you go to a psychic, like here in Los Angeles, a corner store psychic, look, maybe that person's legitimate, but more often than not, what happens is they know they have a little bit of a gift, a little bit of a talent, and so they extrapolate on that. And at a certain point, they're no longer using their talent, they're just using cold reading techniques to keep the customers coming in. And they may even begin with good intentions, and then they fall backward into predatory behavior. So to summarize, we need to be very vigilant about this, and don't just believe everything you hear and everything that people tell you. And this leads to my next point, which is bad psychics don't just con people, they spread bad information. So if you look at the other videos on this channel, I talk about how there's a lot of bad information, in particular about what happens when you die. So the afterlife is a huge field that is heavily explored by people who have had near-death experiences, by people who do out-of-body exploration like myself. And there's a lot of consistent, very compelling information that paints a realistic portrayal of what happens when we die. But the bad psychics, what these guys do is not only do they con people out of whatever the $100, $200, to have a session with them, they also con the public about what happens when you die. Because they're basically getting information from their imaginations, or they're just repeating other things they hear about. So you won't receive meaningful, objective data about such a complex topic by them. They will just repeat things they hear elsewhere. So as an example, they repeat a lot of tropes. They say, you go to the light. You are in a place of peace and joy and happiness. Okay, just nice things people want to hear about, but it's not useful. Because you can say that about anybody. And then you'll find these arguments break down when you question these people and attempt to get better information. A lot of times they don't have a way of discerning good from bad behavior, and they don't understand concepts about rather divine laws about self-responsibility and free will. If you ask these guys, like, where is Hitler? They'll say, well, everybody who dies is in heaven. because it's very marketable to go pure positive, to not talk about the realities of negative astral environments and the very horrific places that out of body explorers and people have encountered. It's easy to just say, well, everybody is in this beautiful, happy, peaceful place. And then you're like, okay, well, if suicide bombers and school shooters and rapists and cannibals and these types of people die and have no consequences and they're all happy and floating in a cloud and playing the harp, then what's the point of anything? Because we all go to the same place. We're all just floating around in love and light, you know? And these weird misconceptions arise because of people positioning themselves as gurus, trying to be authorities so that essentially they can make a buck. So we have to be vigilant not only with having psychics who want to rip us off, but we also have to be vigilant about the inaccurate data that we receive from people attempting to keep their reputations valid by spreading ideas and not giving it any thought. Essentially, bubblegum metaphysical ideas, bubblegum supernatural topics. It's all just bubblegum, folks. And if you go deeper into the subjects, you will find credible information that explores these subjects more thoroughly. That's what I advise. You can check out my website, afterlifetopics.com, for more information about that. And you can read about the objective scientific data about the afterlife at our friend Victor Zamet's site, victorzamet.com. And hopefully this video will help you a bit on your journey. If you liked it, please give it a thumbs up, give me a subscribe so that I can keep going with all this. And that's it. This is Cyrus Kirkpatrick. One last thing, I have a new book out called The Afterlife and Beyond, where I explore these topics from hopefully an objective angle, as well as my old book, Understanding Life After Death. Okay, and we will talk next time. Until then.